Okay, let's have a look at what should be the order. Now, as usual, when we are finding out the order of the sentences, we start with the independent sentence, the sentence which does not have reference to any other sentences. So we check for the sentences which does not have any linking words linking it back to other sentences, or has any dependent ideas which clarification requires us to read another sentence. And if we look from that perspective, we can easily see here that this sentence says subsequently, which means after something, so it cannot be the first sentence. And if we look at B, it says that as a result of the souring of Pakistani-Afghan relations, Daud's cousin, King Muhammad Zahir Shah, removed him from office. And an ethnic Pashtun of noble birth, Daud held a series of military and government posts before becoming Minister of Defense in 1946 and Minister of the Interior from 1949 to 1950. Daud was overthrown and assassinated. So this one is talking about being overthrown and assassinated, which is the death, being killed by someone. And this cannot be the first sentence because death must be the last thing when you're talking about the biography of a person. As Prime Minister from 1953 to 1963, it must have happened after he was born. So looking at all the sentences, we can see that this is about biography of a person. And general logic for biography of a person is you start from the birth, then you talk about what the person accomplished, and then how the person died or what happened at the end. And from that perspective, we can easily see that this is the sentence which is talking about the beginning of his political career. So he was born, he became the minister. So what happened after that? After becoming the minister, later on he became prime minister from 1953 to 1963. So he became the prime minister here. So looking at these two sentences, we can safely say that the first sentence here is C and the next sentence here is A. And a simple logic here is timeline. We can look at the time here, that gives us the clue. Then we can look at the series of events which are happening from 46 to 49 to 50, then 53 to 63, then 59. Now after this, there are three sentences left, and they are A, B, and D. Now, among these sentences, we can see that A and B both are talking about a king, which means they are related sentences. So they should be together and make unbreakable pair. But in what order? In order to find that, we have to read the sentence, and if we do that, the clue is obvious. Here you can see King Muhammad Zahir Shah, and here you can see the king. So if you want to refer to Muhammad Zahir Shah as the king, first you have to mention his complete name, his full name with title. And that way you can see that B becomes the first in the pair, and after B comes A. Now only one is left, and that is D. Now if you look at D, you can also see that D is telling us about Daud being killed, which must be the last thing we'll be discussing when we are talking about biography of a person. So I think it's now becoming more clear to you that when you are looking at biography of a person, the clues are the different events that took place in that person's life. So you have to look at the series of events which were taking place. Okay. I guess now it is clear to you that it's CEBAD. So biography of a person, how do you need to look at this kind of paragraphs? You have to start with the initial events, intervening events, and the final events. And a logical scenario would be birth, work, death. And also be careful about some clues given in the sentences. As we saw in sentence B and E, sentence B was saying the king, sentence A was saying the king, and sentence B was saying King Muhammad Zahir Shah, which made it clear that the king means King Muhammad Zahir Shah, because of which we knew that both the sentences were talking about the same person, so they were together. And sentence A was referring to that person as the king, which gave us the clue that it should be B and A. So this is a very simple example of a timeline. Timeline-based questions are very common in the test, and you should be able to identify them. You will be able to identify them if you can see different references to different time periods. So that's the first question. Let's look at the second question. So I'm putting the question on the screen now. You can have a look here. I will give you 2 minutes to think about in what order you'll put these sentences. Okay. Now you can start. Okay, I guess now I need to tell you the answer. And I can see when you're sending me the answers here, I can see all of you are making the same mistake. And that mistake is you are not thinking about I. This sentence. Remember this sentence, this is actually 19th. This is a mistake. It should be 19th. Until the 19th century, workers were given little or no protection. Child labor was common, as were long hours worked in unsafe conditions for minimal pay. Now, remember, in this question, they are talking about the situation until 19th century, which covers first century, second century, third century. I mean, all the time period before the 19th century. Which means if you are thinking that this is a timeline and you should start with, let's say, 1871, 1974, 18th century, then you are taking it wrong. Because I told you timeline is not just about arranging the numbers, it's about arranging the time. That means which time period a particular sentence is talking about. So you can see that I is a very general sentence which is talking about all the things that were happening before the 19th century. That covers the situation of the skilled workers. Now, after that, only rest of the sentences will start. So remember, I is the first sentence here, and the reason for that is this situation gives us an overview of the general scenario, the general condition of the workers before the 19th century. That makes this sentence the first sentence. After I, the next would be a little difficult and confusing to find out. But I told you that when you are doing timeline-based questions, don't just rely on the numbers, which means 18, 19. Don't just rely on those numbers. Try to think about at what time period things happened. For example, F says, in the late 18th century, a group of skilled workers began to control the hiring of apprentices and bargain with employers for better working conditions. But as the movement grew, these trade unions tried to find ways of creating an alliance among themselves. So trade unions were thinking of creating an alliance among themselves. So that means they are thinking of starting an organization for their welfare. Then you can see the first meeting of the Trades Union Congress took place in Manchester, at which 34 delegates represented well over 100,000 trade union members. So here they are trying to find ways of creating alliance. Here they had their first meeting, which is, you can see, which had 100,000 trade union members, and trade unions were legalized in the act of 18th century. And by the end of the century, that was. So in this question, you will first need to find out which is the main idea here. And I will give you a clue here. The main idea, the topic here is Valentine's Day. So you need to find a sentence which contains the topic and is independent as well. So which sentence out of A, B, C, D, E you think is the first sentence? So far, I have received 2 answers, and both the answers have mistakes. I have highlighted some of the important concepts to answer this question. Look at these words and decide yourself which one will be the first sentence. Okay, let me tell you. A starts by saying one was a priest in Rome, means they are talking about priests, which must have been already mentioned, because they are saying one was a priest, another a bishop, which means they must be talking about the priest they mentioned earlier. B says this early pope, which gives us an idea that this sentence is related to another sentence where they are talking about pope. This pagan festival tells us that this sentence is related to another sentence where the author is talking about festival. D says the history of Valentine's Day is obscure, which is our topic, and further clouded by various fanciful legends, which makes it possible to be the first sentence. The holidays roots. Now, we have discussed even in the class many times that when somebody says the holiday, the pen, the car, they're talking about a specific holiday, specific pen, specific car, and so on. So the holiday means they must have talked about some kind of holiday before this. Because of this, we can say that D is the first sentence, because this is the only sentence which is independent and introduces the topic. Now, we have gone through other sentences as well. A is talking about one was a priest in Rome, means they're talking about some kind of priest. B is talking about this early pope, means it's related to some sentence with which is talking about pope. The history, this began festival, means it's talking about some festival. Now, for this particular question, I'll use a different method, the method of unbreakable pairing. So we have found first sentence, and in the method of the unbreakable pairing, what we do is, rather than going through sentences 2, 3, 4, 5 in order, we start the pairing process with the easiest pair first. Now, if we look at these 4 sentences, I can see that B is saying this early pope. Now, whenever a sentence contains this, that, these, those, these kind of sentences are easier to pair up with the other sentences, because this, that, these, those, and such are 5 words which are followed by the words or ideas in the previous sentence. So I'll start with B, which sent Valentine this early pope, which means there is another sentence talking about pope. I just need to find out where is that sentence, and that is C. And that means it should be C and B, right? So I'm not trying to go in order. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm making the pairs correctly. So one pair that I have found here is CB. Again, if I check, I can see Pope Gelasius I recasts this began festival. This began festival means this sentence is pairing up with another sentence talking about a festival. And I just need to find out a sentence talking about festival. And then I can see that is E, right? So E is related to C. E is related to C. This began festival. And that means Roman festival of Lupercalia. So that way, our order will be, which one? E first, and then C, right? There is another pair now. Now A is left. One was a priest in Rome, another bishop in Terni, and of a third Saint Valentine, almost nothing is known. Now, looking at this, and of a third Saint Valentine, and since they have already mentioned 2 here, they must be talking about 3 saints of the name Valentine in previous sentences. And if we check that, we can see 3 early Christian saints by that name. So which means this and this is related. So B is related to A. So rather than going in order, I'm just trying to pair up as many of the sentences as I can quickly do. And so it becomes BA. Now, we just need to make it. Now in the exam, this happens by dragging and then reordering the sentences here, because we are typing, that's why it looks like this. But in the exam, if you are doing something like this, your order will be ultimately correct. How? Let me explain. D we already know is the first. Now we can see that E and C should come together and C and B should come together, which means it is ECB, right? And A comes after B only. So our order is DECBA. So in the exam, this is how I do it. Rather than finding second, third, fourth, fifth, I start with whichever pair I can make. Here, you can see the repetition of C and B and then E and C, because I'm not dragging and reordering the sentences. It's not possible on the paper right now. But in the exam, if I'm going by the method of unbreakable pairing, then it's easy. We can easily put them in pair. When the more pairs we make, the easier it gets to put the other sentence in the correct order. So this method is called the unbreakable pair method, and this I find more convenient and quicker than the traditional method suggested by Pearson and some other places as well. I think this is the best method to practice real paragraph questions. So these are the 4 types of questions I was planning to discuss with you today, but I think we need to interact more about what you got and what you understood and what you did not. So if you have any questions about all the 4 questions we discussed today, just send me a message and I will get back to you and I'll try to explain what was the concept. Okay, I'm waiting for another 5 minutes. If you have any problem, just let me know and I'll explain. Okay, so Amrita is asking a question here. I thought A come after D. It says various. Okay, it says by various fanciful legends, and by that what they are saying is there are many myths surrounding the history of Valentine's Day. People are not sure how the Valentine's Day started, and that's why. And you can see that after that they are trying to explain how the Valentine's Day started, because they are saying like it used to be celebrated on 15th of February, then they changed it to 14th, and then they said like this was to celebrate one saint called Saint Valentine, but later on they found that there are actually three Saint Valentines, and which one they were talking about, it's not clear. And that's how they are trying to tell you that there are so many fanciful legends. Clouded means when the sky is cloudy, it's not clear. So clouded means not clear.